Some of the best plugins are created when multiple musical concepts come together. For example, dynamic EQ allowed for simultaneous control over the frequency response and dynamic range. Even though these two concepts are heavily intertwined, audio processors were designed to affect one or the other as if each existed in a bubble. By combining the two, we can make more accurate changes, as well as better understand how the frequency response can affect the dynamic range and vice versa. But since then, few, if any, processors have made such a logical and valuable connection between multiple production concepts. Now recently, Eventide was kind enough to send me a copy of Temperance Pro, their new modal reverb plugin, and asked me to cover it in a video. But my thoughts in this video are completely my own, and I wouldn't be covering this plugin if I didn't find that it does something really important. And after using it, I believe Temperance Pro does something as significant as Dynamic EQ did a decade or so ago. So, let's cover what Temperance Pro does that's unique, how it uses modal resonances to create its effect, and let me know if you also think that Temperance Pro Reverb is a huge step forward in music production. So if Dynamic EQ combines processing dynamics and the frequency response, what does Temperance Pro combine? In short, whenever we use reverb, we alter the frequency response. If reflections have higher amplitudes at particular frequency ranges, then that alters the frequency response of the reverberated signal. For example, say a reverb's reflections have an amplified low-mid range. The reverberated signal would then also have an amplified low-mid range, in turn equalizing the signal. Now, this occurs with every reverb type and model, but it's rarely discussed or controlled in a meaningful way. Temperance differs from other reverbs by purposefully introducing highly controllable, frequency-specific reflections, something other reverbs are unable to do. Now, it uses an advanced and rarely used form of processing to accomplish this, but we'll dive into that in a moment. First, let's listen to Temperance on various instruments. Notice how we can emphasize specific frequencies with such accuracy that we're able to create specific notes, and any combination of notes. It's not tuning the reverb reflections, it's causing additional resonances at specific frequencies or nodes, similar to how a room has nodes and antinodes. Anyway, let's try the plugin.
Wait a minute, just a second, slow your brain. You talk so much you're interrupted by the words you say, and you feel smaller than the wires in your frame. Cars can't talk you down, and your friends can't coax you out. Choir of 100 hounds, I found a light at the center that held out.
As you could hear, we're able to emphasize frequencies within the reflections and with enough accuracy that specific notes can be emphasized. Now, real quick, let's cover how this works and how it differs from other reverbs. Then we'll take a deeper look at the plugin's functionality, how to use it, and some cool techniques that you could introduce that simply aren't possible with other processors. So let's talk about modal resonance. Most reverbs use an algorithm and a series of delay taps, or they use convolution processing, which is what's used by impulse response loaders. Temperance uses a new system that they're calling modal resonance, in which the reverb is broken up into thousands of resonating frequencies. If I want a reverb that sounds brighter, I'd cause the resonators in the high range to resonate for longer and at a higher amplitude. But what's so useful about this system is that you can pinpoint frequencies to specific notes, which is why Temperance is described as a musical reverb. If I want a reverb that emphasizes in-key frequencies or notes, I'd pick the notes that correspond to the key of the performance or song. The modes that occupy these specific notes would resonate for longer and with a higher amplitude. There's a lot of uses for this, which we'll cover as we look at the plugin's functionality, but let's listen to this effect on a guitar. Notice how I can use the plugin to emphasize in-key frequencies, in turn, enhancing the musicality of the performance. So let's cover Temperance Pro's functionality. To use Temperance Pro, you'd select the notes you'd like to emphasize. As you increase the temper dial, the amount of resonance is increased for those specific notes. Now, if you'd like to de-emphasize these notes, say they're out of key with the performance, and you don't want discordant reflections, you'd turn the temper dial to a negative value. The note width is similar to a Q value in an EQ. The higher the width, the larger the bandwidth of the affected frequencies. If the width of the temperance were low, it would be similar to having a very narrow filter. A wide value would be a wide filter. The center frequency is still emphasized to the greatest extent, but those around it are still emphasized. A very narrow value could be used creatively, but it doesn't result in the most natural sound, so I'd recommend experimenting with it to find the value that works best for the instrument. Now, the target value applies to the tempered reflections. So if I'm emphasizing the note A, the target determines if the beginning reflections emphasize A, if the late reflections emphasize A, or if both emphasize the note. The other parameters are what you'd expect, but due to the unique structure of Temperance Pro, they behave differently than how you'd expect. For example, size doesn't simply increase the delay length like with algorithmic reverb. Instead, it increases the length of the relevant mode's resonation. Or density doesn't cause the delay taps to occur sooner, it increases the number of modes, but to my ear, the quality is much higher due to the accuracy with which it can introduce these changes. If you'd like to emphasize 1 or 2 octaves with the temperance function, you could use the range slider to highlight a specific range. Additionally, you could isolate the overall reverb to the desired range with variable sloped high and low pass filters. Now, this combined with the mix and temper amount allows for either subtle or creative effects and everywhere in between. Now, up top we have multiple preset reverb types, again utilizing modal resonance to create the reflections. Since the emphasized frequencies are incredibly specific and accurate, even traditional reverb is created with a sense of realism that goes beyond that of both algorithmic and convolution reverb. These are categorized into rooms, halls, various hardware units, unnatural spaces, and some experimental modes that the developers included to show the unique capabilities of the modal resonance structure. So let's take a listen to these preset reverb responses. I'm going to showcase various techniques and label each one during the demo, such as in-key emphasis, out-of-key de-emphasis, and low-order harmonic emphasis, and more. Notice how much musical versatility we can achieve due to the amount of control we have over the resonance's respective frequencies. Last up, let's cover some additional features. So aside from features like pre-delay, offset, which alters the frequency of the resonance, and position, which alters the early and late reflections for the overall reverb, we have some very unique functions at the bottom of the plugin. For example, I could find the key of the track and select that, with every possible note combination selectable and mapped out. Now you might have noticed the sequencer, which is great if you know the chord structure of your performance. This way you can include the in-key notes for each performed chord, and in the correct timing of the performance. Now, if you want to do this live or you want to create more elaborate resonant structures, you could enable MIDI, play the session, and create the modal resonances as the keyboard or MIDI performance. Now, I saved these functions for last since I'm not sure how frequently they'll be used, but it's great to know that you can create reverb that's tailored to your performance. Let's take one last listen to cover as many sounds as we can. There's a link in the description if you'd like to try Temperance Pro for yourself, and also I've included a link for Temperance Blight, which is a scaled down but free version of the plugin, but important side note, it's only free for the remainder of 2025.
Wait a minute, just a second, slow your brain. You talk so much you're interrupted by the words you say, and you feel smaller than the wires in your frame. That ain't my place, but I've been down, and your friends can't coax you out. In the choir of 100 hours, I found a light at the center got held out.
If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us, Sage Audio has been a mastering studio for 2 decades. To work with us, create a free account, upload your mixes, click Request Mastering, and leave any notes that you'd like. The master is uploaded to your account when it's done for you to review and to download. And if you're not completely happy, request a revision. We're not happy with your masters until you are. The standard turnaround is $49 a track, the express turnaround is $59 a track, and it's mastered by actual mastering engineers. Now, if you don't need anything mastered, or you'd prefer to do the mastering side yourself, liking the video and subscribing is a great way to help us out. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.